What you're looking at is one of the most sophisticated direction-finding instruments in the pre-modern world. This is a Luo Pan, a Chinese geomantic compass containing dozens of rings, sometimes up to 40, of cosmic information. Each one precisely calibrated to map the invisible forces that govern our world. Every symbol, every character, every line calculated to reveal the hidden patterns connecting heaven and earth. But here's the paradox that will completely shatter everything you think you know about navigation history. For over 1,000 years, the Chinese possessed this magnetic marvel, the very technology that would eventually enable European ships to cross unknown oceans and discover new continents. Yet they used it primarily to choose where to bury their dead and which direction to face their buildings. Think about that for a moment. The civilization that gave us gunpowder, paper, and printing had the key to global maritime dominance in their hands. They could have been the ones to discover the Americas. They could have been the ones to establish worldwide trade networks. They could have been the ones to build the first global empire. Instead, while China was consulting the cosmos to harmonize with spiritual forces, Europe stripped this technology down to its bare essence and used it to conquer the seas. This isn't just a story about technology transfer. This is about how cultural purpose determines technological destiny, and why the civilization that invented magnetic navigation wasn't the first to use it for global exploration. The answer lies not in Chinese technological limitations, but in something far more profound: the fundamental difference between seeking harmony with the universe and seeking to dominate it. Today, we're diving deep into one of history's greatest technological mysteries, and by the end, you'll understand exactly how ancient China invented magnetic navigation and why the West used it first. Phase 1: The spiritual origin. Our story begins over 2,000 years ago, during China's Han Dynasty, sometime between the 2nd century BC and the 1st century AD. But this isn't the story of sailors or explorers. This is the story of magicians, court astronomers, and the mystical origins of the world's most important navigational tool. The first known magnetic directional device in history was called the Sinan, literally meaning south pointer. But forget everything you think you know about compasses. This wasn't a needle floating in water or mounted on a pivot. It was a spoon. Yes, a spoon. Carved from naturally magnetized lodestone, placed on a polished bronze plate covered in mystical symbols that would make a modern physicist's head spin. Picture this bronze diviner's board, a masterpiece of cosmic engineering. The 8 trigrams of the I Ching arranged in perfect symmetry. The 24 directional markers tied to specific constellations. The 28 lunar mansions marking the moon's journey across the sky. Often a depiction of the Big Dipper at the very center. The square base represented Earth in all its material reality. The circular plate represented heaven in all its infinite mystery. This wasn't just a tool. This was Chinese cosmology made physical. A machine designed to bridge the gap between the seen and unseen worlds. The Sinan's purpose was profoundly spiritual. Understanding this is crucial to solving our historical puzzle. Court astronomers and feng shui masters used it to divine auspicious orientations for buildings, tombs, and imperial rituals. In an ancestor-worshipping culture where the dead continued to influence the living, aligning a tomb or palace with cosmic forces wasn't just important. It was a matter of imperial legitimacy and spiritual survival. The first clear reference appears in the Han-era book Lun Heng, written around 70 to 80 AD by the scholar Wang Chong. He described witnessing how, when the south-pointing spoon is thrown upon the ground, it comes to rest, pointing at the south. But Wang Chong wasn't describing a navigation tool. He was documenting a miracle, a physical manifestation of the cosmic order that governed all existence. Here's what's crucial to understand. What separates this story from simple technological evolution? The Chinese didn't see this as a tool for getting from point A to point B. They saw it as a window into the spiritual architecture of the universe itself. The compass wasn't pointing toward a destination. It was pointing toward cosmic harmony, toward the proper alignment between human activity and celestial forces. This spiritual framework would shape Chinese compass technology for the next 1,000 years, creating both its greatest sophistication and its greatest limitation. Phase 2. The complexity constraint. Fast forward to the Song dynasty, 960 to 1279 AD. This is when everything changed, yet paradoxically, everything stayed the same. Chinese alchemists made a breakthrough that would revolutionize compass technology. They discovered they could magnetize ordinary iron by stroking it with lodestone, or by heating it to red-hot temperatures while aligned north-south, then cooling it in that position. Suddenly, compasses could be mass-produced. No longer were they limited by the size and availability of natural lodestone. Iron was abundant, malleable, and could be shaped into needles, fish, or any form desired. This should have been the moment when Chinese navigation exploded across the world's oceans. By 1088 AD, the brilliant polymath Shen documented the first detailed scientific description of a magnetized needle compass. In his masterwork, Dream Pool Essays, Shen was essentially the Leonardo da Vinci of medieval China, a man whose intellectual curiosity knew no bounds. But even as he advanced the technology, he remained firmly within the traditional cultural framework. Here's where our story takes a fascinating turn. As the compass technology evolved and became more practical, it didn't become simpler. It became exponentially more complex. The traditional diviner's plate evolved into the Luo Pan, and this evolution reveals everything about why China didn't immediately dominate global navigation. A complete Luo Pan contains up to 40 rings of information, each serving a specific cosmological function. The inner circles show the 8 trigrams representing the fundamental forces of existence. The outer circles display the 24 compass points of the Chinese geomantic system, equivalent to 15-degree intervals, but named after earthly branches and celestial stems, rather than simple, directional terms. But that's just the beginning. A master-level Luo Pan contains astronomical data tracking the movement of stars and planets. Calendrical information linking specific dates to cosmic energies. Elemental correspondences showing how different directions relate to wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Dozens of additional directional markers tied to ancient Chinese philosophy and divination practices. This wasn't just a compass. It was a portable computer for cosmic calculation, a device that could determine not just which way was north, but whether traveling north on a particular day would bring good fortune or disaster. Whether building a house facing a certain direction would ensure prosperity. Here's the critical point that explains our entire historical puzzle. While this complexity made the Luo Pan brilliant for geomantic purposes, it was over-engineered for a captain who just needs a heading in a storm. A ship's captain caught in a typhoon doesn't need to know the astrological implications of his heading, or whether his current course aligns with the 5 elements. He just needs to know which way is north, and he needs to know it fast. Even when Chinese mariners began using compasses at sea during the Song dynasty, they carried this cosmological baggage with them. Chinese navigation records from this period often use terms like Jiang and Xun from the 24-point system, rather than simple directional commands that any sailor could quickly understand and execute. The knowledge secret, Shen. Now we need to talk about one of history's most underrated geniuses, a man whose discoveries were so far ahead of his time that Europe wouldn't seriously catch up for about 4 centuries. Shen living from 1031 to 1095 AD, was a polymath in the truest sense. A government official, mathematician, astronomer, geologist, and inventor, whose intellectual achievements rival those of any figure in human history. But Shen made one discovery that proves just how sophisticated Chinese understanding of magnetism had become. And it's a discovery that completely demolishes any argument that China lacked the technical knowledge for advanced navigation. Shen was the first person in human history to document magnetic declination. The fact that a compass needle doesn't point to true geographic north, but to magnetic north. In his own carefully recorded words, he observed that the needle will point south, but with a deviation eastward. Think about what this means. While European writers were only just starting to mention the compass, Chinese scholars had already identified and documented its precision limitations. They understood that there was a subtle but crucial difference between magnetic and geographic poles. And they had measured this difference with scientific precision. This wasn't just theoretical knowledge gathering dust in scholarly texts. By the Song period, Chinese trading ships were using compasses on long-distance voyages across the South China Sea and Indian Ocean, eventually reaching as far as the Persian Gulf. The traditional diviner's plate had been converted into a mariner's compass bowl, retaining the essential directional markings around its rim, but adapted for practical shipboard use. The first clear account of a compass being used at sea comes from Zhu Yu's Pingzhou Table Talks, written between 1111 and 1117 AD. Zhu Yu describes the routines of Chinese sailors with remarkable precision. The ship's pilots are acquainted with the configuration of the coasts. At night, they steer by the stars, and in the daytime by the sun. In dark weather, they look at the south-pointing needle. But notice something crucial in Zhu Yu's account, something that reveals the fundamental difference in Chinese maritime philosophy. The compass was described as a backup system, a tool of last resort. Chinese mariners still preferred traditional navigation methods, coastal landmarks by day, star navigation by night. They resorted to the compass only when celestial cues failed, when clouds obscured the stars or fog hid the coastline. This reveals something profound about Chinese maritime culture. Even with superior compass technology and scientific understanding of magnetism, Chinese sailors operated within a framework of cosmic tradition rather than technological dominance. They saw navigation as an art of harmonizing with natural forces, reading the stars, understanding the winds, following the seasonal patterns, rather than imposing human will upon the natural world through technological superiority. The compass, even in its practical maritime application, remained embedded within this philosophical framework. It was a tool for maintaining harmony with cosmic forces, not for boldly venturing into unknown waters where those traditional navigation methods would be useless. Phase 3. Why the West used it first. Sometime in the late 12th century, knowledge of the magnetic compass began its westward journey, along the trade routes that connected east and west. The exact path remains debated by historians. Some argue for transmission through Arab merchants who had encountered Chinese technology in Indian Ocean ports. Others suggest crusaders returning from the east. Still others propose direct contact through Silk Road trade networks. But the timeline is crystal clear and absolutely crucial to our story. The first European reference to compass technology appears around 1190 AD in England, when the scholar Alexander Neckham wrote that sailors, when they can no longer see the sun or stars, touch a needle to a magnet. The needle is whirled, and when it settles, its point looks to the north. Here's where our story takes its most dramatic turn. European mariners didn't just adopt the compass, they completely revolutionized it. And they accomplished this revolution by doing something that Chinese tradition never fully embraced at scale. They stripped away all the complexity. Look at this transformation and understand its profound implications. The Europeans took the basic principle, a magnetized needle indicating magnetic direction, and discarded everything else. No cosmic rings calculating celestial influences, no astrological considerations determining auspicious travel times, no geomantic calculations ensuring harmony with Earth energies, just a simple, brutal, effective pointer showing magnetic north. This wasn't cultural ignorance, this was cultural clarity. European maritime culture was fundamentally different from Chinese cosmic philosophy. Europeans weren't seeking to harmonize with the universe, they were seeking to dominate it. They didn't want to travel in accordance with cosmic forces. They wanted to travel wherever profit and conquest demanded, regardless of what the stars or seasons suggested. But the Europeans didn't stop with philosophical simplification. They solved critical technical problems that had limited compass effectiveness in the harsh conditions of open ocean sailing. Chinese compasses were typically wet compasses. The magnetized needle or iron fish floated in a bowl of water. This design worked perfectly on the relatively calm rivers, canals and coastal waters that Chinese sailors typically navigated. But it was problematic in the rough, unpredictable conditions of ocean sailing. European inventors developed what they called the dry compass, mounting the magnetized needle on a pin so it could pivot freely without requiring water for flotation. By around 1300 AD, they had enclosed this mechanism in a glass-covered box called a binnacle, which kept the compass level and readable even in stormy seas when a water-filled bowl would be sloshing uselessly. Most importantly, Europeans immediately integrated the compass with practical navigation tools designed for conquest rather than harmony. They created Portoland charts, remarkably accurate coastal maps crisscrossed with rhumb lines that corresponded directly to compass bearings. These charts turned the compass from a mystical instrument into a functional tool for plotting courses across unknown waters. The results were immediate and absolutely revolutionary. Mediterranean shipping transformed from a seasonal activity limited by weather and visibility into a year-round enterprise. Venetian merchant convoys could make 2 round trips to the Levant instead of 1, doubling their profits and accelerating the flow of goods between East and West. European sailors began venturing out of sight of land for extended periods, something that had been virtually impossible before reliable compass navigation. Within 300 years of adopting compass technology, European explorers were crossing the Atlantic, rounding the southern tip of Africa, and reaching the Americas and Asia by sea routes that no Chinese navigator had ever attempted. The same technology that the Chinese had possessed for over a millennium became the key to European global expansion and the foundation of the first truly worldwide empires. Conclusion: the legacy of purpose. So here's the answer to our paradox, and it's an answer that reveals something profound about how culture shapes technology. The West didn't need to invent the compass, they just needed to understand what it was for. For China, the compass was a profound spiritual instrument, a tool for harmonizing human activity with cosmic forces that governed all existence. It was designed to help people live in accordance with the invisible energies that flowed through the universe, ensuring that every building, every tomb, every important decision aligned with the greater cosmic order. Every ring on the Luo Pan, every symbol, every calculation served this higher purpose of maintaining harmony between heaven and earth. Remember, the Chinese understood magnetic declination centuries before Europeans understood why their own compasses were off. They had the technical knowledge to dominate global navigation, but their culture directed that knowledge toward different goals. For Europe, the compass represented something entirely different: a weapon of expansion, a simple and pragmatic tool that pointed the way to new trade routes, new lands, and new empires. Europeans saw past the mysticism to the core function: reliable direction finding that could guide ships across unknown waters toward whatever destinations offered the greatest opportunities for profit and conquest. They didn't need cosmic harmony, they needed competitive advantage, they didn't need to align with celestial forces, they needed to reach distant markets before their rivals did. They didn't need spiritual guidance, they needed practical navigation that would work in any weather, at any time, in any ocean. Neither approach is better in a moral sense. They were answering different questions. This difference in cultural purpose explains one of history's greatest technological paradoxes. The civilization that invented magnetic navigation wasn't the first to use it for global exploration because they were solving a completely different problem. The Chinese were looking at the heavens, seeking harmony between earth and sky, trying to understand humanity's proper place in the cosmic order. The Europeans were looking at the horizon, seeking new worlds to conquer, trying to expand their power and wealth across the globe. Both approaches were brilliant in their own way. For its time, the Luo Pan was more information-dense than anything European sailors were using. In terms of understanding magnetism and declination, Song China was centuries ahead of Europe, but only one approach led to the age of exploration, because only one culture saw the compass as a tool for venturing into the unknown rather than for maintaining harmony with the known. Today, every GPS system guiding you to your destination, every smartphone navigation app directing you through city streets, every ship's compass pointing toward port owes its existence to that first lodestone spoon placed on a bronze diviner's board over 2,000 years ago in ancient China. The compass forever changed navigation and ultimately changed the world, but only once humanity was ready to use it for that purpose. The technology and early science were Chinese. The decision to turn it into a machine for crossing oceans and building overseas empires happened first in Europe. And that's exactly how ancient China invented magnetic navigation, but the West used it first.